Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, depending on where and when this finds you. But I can only hope that it finds you doing well. Welcome to the Perspective House podcast. I'm hoping that you can hear something today on this episode that shifts your perspective and perhaps a little bit of wisdom that you can take and apply in a practical sense and apply to your life. All right. So this happens to be, in some regards, the first episode that I'm making of this nature. I think you find this channel already has an episode that I had put out a little while ago, but those were the shorter versions of what I would call, you know, the podcast. But this, in essence, is the first of its kind where I'm speaking in such a manner and I have a bit more time to express the ideas that I have and really just to get into some of the things that I feel are necessary not only to share with you, but some of the things I myself am aspiring to live out and to walk out. And I think one of the first things that I have to make an admission of is the fact that this is new to me. This is completely new to me. These are waters that are, in many regards, uncharted. I've never done anything of this nature or had any type of training for this type of thing. But nonetheless, this is not so much a disclaimer to say that my intentions are to make content or produce content that isn't good or that isn't excellent. I think above everything, I strive to make excellence that is going to be not only great, but it's going to be practical for the person that hears this. And that, in essence, is really the heart of this particular podcast that under Perspective House that we're making. The desire that we have here is to make a podcast that shares practical wisdom that any person or anybody can, apply to their lives to live out their life to the absolute fullest. So when you hear this, I'm hoping you don't just become informed. I'm hoping that this can be something that, helps you become. I think to me that really, in essence, is what perspective or perspectives are supposed to do. Enlighten you in essence to become maybe something that you weren't, or to grow out of something maybe that you didn't realize was not even helping you. So I guess to answer the question, why Perspective House and why are we doing this, it's really just that, to share practical wisdom for daily life or daily living that allows us to live life to the absolute fullest. So with that introduction, if I can call it that, we can get into what I have today. And what I have today is something that I feel is very interesting. And it's a quote that I'm going to share by John C. Maxwell. If you know me, then this is somebody who perhaps has, mentioned in conversation. And he shares an interesting thought, which I thought perhaps today I could share with all of you. And, it's something that I've been pondering on, and I'll continue to do so as I look to make this truth, I would say practical in my own life. So let me just read, and then perhaps from there we can get into why this particular thought was interesting to me. So the thought simply says, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. John C. Maxwell. And I thought that particular quote was very interesting for me because I can recall on many occasions, and even in beginning this podcast, where I felt that I, needed to be at a particular level of either competence or have certain equipment to, I guess, pursue this. And I find that this is not only a reality that I myself have faced, but many other people who are trying to, make the most of the talents, the gifts, the time, and even the opportunities that they have. They feel that they have to have reached a certain level, maybe of expertise, a certain level of knowledge, a certain level of um I don't know, greatness, if you will, in order for them to start. But I find that, the biggest hurdle that we need to overcome in most circumstances is just the beginning. Once we start, I feel from then on, it's just really, um, I don't want to say it's automatic, but it becomes so much easier for us to, pursue the things that we want to pursue. And even as I was thinking about this, I thought about, and I think in sharing some of the things that I've just said, I thought about what could be some of the reasons, or at least the ideas, or even the lies that we tend to believe. And I mentioned one of them as I was speaking. And it's just this lie of, once I have it all together, once I have this equipment, or, once I buy, this particular thing, then I can start working on this dream. Once I do A, B, C, D, then I can start working on this dream. And I find that I've been guilty of this, and I think many others. So you could be listening to this. And I think as you're listening, I'm hoping that you're also propping your mind and asking yourself, and also being honest with yourself to say, what lies have I personally believed that could perhaps be limiting me from living life, or even starting those things that could afford me a life that I actually enjoy. Because for me, in my own life, I find that the things that I delayed to start or begin, oftentimes because I hadn't been pursuing them, it brought somewhat of a little bit of frustration to me, because there was a witness within me that said, but you can do this. But yet I looked at the thing that I did not have. I looked at maybe the knowledge that I did not have, and I felt, but I can't start because, and I can't do this because, and I can't go there because, and I find that oftentimes we just need to start. So without even complicating this, if you're listening to this and this is all you've heard, and this is as far as you've heard, I'm encouraging you. And it's an appeal really, just to start. Like if the lie within you, or what you have believed so far has been, I just don't have it all together, then I think you need to start. Another reason which I feel that perhaps, many people have perhaps not started is they're waiting for validation. And again, I don't want to talk about things or circumstances that are beyond me. I want to talk about my life. And for me, I've literally been at this place of waiting for people to give me validation, to say, what, you actually are good at this and you should do this. And so because of that, because I didn't get the validation, it took me a bit of time to actually just, begin to act, or to get in motion. And I feel that some people, that you have perhaps a particular skill or a particular interest. It could be anything really, but we tend to wait for people's validation. And again, I'm putting myself here in this conversation because you want the applause before you've actually begun working. You want the pat on the back before you've actually begun to do anything. And I found myself waiting, literally waiting. And unfortunately, the struggle, or should I say the challenge, is that other people are kind of also waiting for their own validation. So nobody really has the time to be giving out validation when they're desperately also just longing for validation. So if you've been waiting on validation, and again, I just want to make this truth, or these truths, very practical. If you hear this and this is as far as you heard, and this isn't even intended to be very long, it's just really, to me, how they're putting out all these boosters. This is that booster. You hear it, go do it. So if you've been waiting for validation, and as great as people are in championing our dreams, but they seldom, our dreams seldom start with other people. They might be inspired by them, but people are not what, in essence, get us in motion. We do. So if perhaps your reason for not starting has been waiting for validation, or even just waiting to get, everything that you need, then, perhaps you never start. But this is an encouragement, really. This is really an encouragement, and one that I'm hoping that you take seriously. And and these are things that I feel many people know, but have you considered this miraculous, this life-transforming thing of just doing it? Just get out there and do it. And just get out there and do it. So I felt that those were some of the things that, for me, that have personally stopped me. And I know there could be more things, and I'm inviting you, if you're listening to this, to share. Get in contact with me. I think I'll put in the show notes how you can get in contact with me. Instagram, if you already know me and follow me on Instagram. My Facebook, if we're already friends. Or even my WhatsApp, if at all you have my phone number. Get in contact, share some of the thoughts that you have just based on these ideas. But I feel some of the benefits of actually just starting for me would be actually also just eventually learning what doesn't work. Until you start, how will you know what doesn't work? And I feel for me, one of the best ways you can know for sure that this will not work for me is by starting. But until you start, you might, I would say, romanticize this idea of a particular path But until you've actually tried it, you won't know that that won't work for you. So you could spend over a year just waiting or romanticizing this idea of like, this thing could work for me, but you haven't started. So how will you know if that can really work for you? So my recommendation, if at all, like if you're trying to even just tell like, well, this idea is it actually tangible? Like, can it actually work? Just do it. And from there, you'll be able to tell and see to say, oh man, this thing, no, it just won't work. Like it would just not work. And I feel for me, one of the benefits of also just learning to start is that it helps you to build that muscle. That the muscle, in essence, to me, is the muscle of starting, or at least it gives you that momentum. That means other things that you could also be attempting to accomplish or even wanting to do, it won't be so much of a hustle, won't be so much of a challenge because you're building strength. You're literally building strength. I believe that muscles, and well, it's not just my belief, but professionals will tell you how you build muscle is by literally resisting. Like you have to be lifting heavier things. That means you're resisting the weight of a heavy object, or in this case, weights. And the more that you do that, the more you resist, the more reps you get in, you're actually building muscle. So I feel for me that once you begin or learn this art of starting, once you get in the work, like you're literally making it easier for yourself. You're building the momentum that you need to do other things. So it could just be starting in one area, but it will set you up on a path where you're excited to see some results. You're excited to see what would happen if you just start. So for me, again, and I feel like I'll keep saying these, I'll keep coming, just after I share a thought and just say, if this is all you've heard so far on this podcast, and again, this is to me, I can't say that there is an orthodox way to make a podcast. So this is how best I feel these ideas could help people out there, is just to remind you, this is practical. This isn't just something you hear and, under this, under this idea of like, oh, I heard this, it was really good. No, it's I heard this and then I became, and then I went to do, and then I went off and actually put this into practice. So if this is all you've heard, make a note of this, make a note of this, write it down in a book somewhere. Say this week, your journal, book, diary, whatever that looks like for you, this week, say, I want to actually try this thing here. One of the things that I personally enjoy is cooking. And I can tell you that a lot of the things that I have learned in my time cooking, and I'm saying this because I think I'm a decent cook. One of the things that I've learned is that until you try, you never know. You never know. People have often said like, oh man, like I don't know how to cook and I wish I could cook like that. Like, how will you know if you just don't start? So if this is all you've heard, and this is as much time you've had to listen to this podcast, and you could never even tell me that you heard this podcast, but the one thing you can do is just go and do or apply these truths, then we would have accomplished what we're trying to do here at Perspective House. So there's another thought that I wanted to share that's sort of in line with this, and this somewhat stems from my faith, and I'm going to read it to you. It comes from Ecclesiastes 11 verse 4 from the Amplified, and it simply reads, "He who observes the wind and waits for all the conditions to be favorable will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap." I feel that if you've been standing, waiting for all the conditions to be favorable, it's very clear from the good book, like you will not sow. If you're watching the clouds, you will not reap. So perhaps if you've been in a daze and you're just watching until all the conditions are favorable, it's very clear you will not sow. You will not sow. So this is really my encouragement, and that was the purpose of this particular podcast. I think we're coming on 15 minutes now, and my intention isn't to make something that's very long, but really something that's quick. You can just write it down and say, okay, you know what? I have to start. And if it means, and I feel for me that sometimes you also have to take steps to actually, in a sense, make your mind agreeable to the truth that you want to walk out in. So for me, what that looked like is also just, and this is something I'm doing for this month, is I wrote down somewhere my word for the month was execute. And this was very inspired by Eric Thomas. So I just wrote and I read this to myself. I say, I execute. Like I literally execute. Like, so if it means you have to rewire your mind to the truth that you're good at starting, and not only starting, but you see what you start through, then you have to write it down and literally confess it so that your mind as well can begin to align to that particular truth. So this is my encouragement to you. And as we're ending, well, one person for me who is such a great example at just starting is my mother. My mother's name is Florence Cabuela, and she is one of the most hardworking and phenomenal women I know. And this is really a shout out to her as I'm making this podcast, because I think of, a dream of hers that she started 4 years ago, which is, to her dream was to open a school. She started 4 years ago. The temptation in her was really to begin when she gets to retirement age. But the prompting within her just said, you have to begin this thing. And just watching her journey from the time of starting that school and even up until now, I can tell you, like, it has been not only inspirational for me, but I know it has been personally rewarding for her. And she didn't wait until she had all of the classrooms. She didn't wait until she had all of the like the right equipment, the furniture, the fittings, whatever else goes into running the school. It was really one day just deciding, like, you know what, I can't go on anymore waiting until I have it all together, until I get to that retirement age, until I have all the money that I need. It's just really like, okay, you know what, I have this money and I'm going to start this thing. And it's been personally rewarding for her, because she told me to say this is a dream that she had when she was younger. And now just watching her walk in the fulfillment of that dream, and as she continues to pursue it, the dream and the vision itself just gets bigger and bigger. And I think that's a reality that each and every one of us can have, and we can definitely walk in, but we have to start. We don't have to be great, but we have to start to be great. So that was my time. Rather, this is my time. Again, unorthodox. So there are things about this that just, you heard and you're like, wow. Okay, what did I just hear? Yeah, this is rather unorthodox and it's a new path for me. But I'm hoping that you are going to take, what I said seriously and just start. So again, that was my time. I will be in contact, or you will hear from me next week.